Welcome to the Menopause Unplugged Podcast with me, your host, Nikki Oliveira. On this podcast, we will hear from women who are navigating the challenging and transformative journey of perimenopause and menopause. These women have graciously agreed to share their stories and insights, offering a raw and honest glimpse into what it's like to go through this major life transition. From hot flushes to rediscovering themselves, our guests will provide a wealth of knowledge and inspiration for anyone who's going through or will go through menopause. So grab a cup of tea, settle in, and join us for a fascinating and enlightening discussion. I am joined today by the lovely Marybeth, all the way from the States. How you doing, Marybeth? You okay today?
Yes, I'm doing great. It's beautiful out here today. I'm in Washington State, so it's sunny and in the 60s, which is great.
Amazing. Oh, I wish it was here. We're in rainy Glasgow in Scotland in the UK.
Yeah. Well, I'm near Seattle, so we're off in that kind of weather, so we're pretty excited today.
Ah, lovely. Well, if we could swap places, I would, trust me. So let's dive right in then, Marybeth. Because I know you said you've had quite the experience with menopause. So can you tell me a little bit more about it?
Yeah, so I'd say about 8 years ago, or 8.5 years ago, I started perimenopause, but I had no idea what it was. Honestly, before getting into this really significant journey that I've had, I think I knew there were hot flashes, and I never really concerned myself with them. I didn't know anything about it. I just didn't really think anything about it. I was really healthy in my 40s. So, about 8.5 years ago, I started experiencing, and probably a little bit even before that, really, really, really heavy periods. I'm talking like, going through a super tampon in less than an hour. Every time I went to the store, I'd have to come back and change my clothes. I couldn't really go on a walk longer than 45 minutes. And I really love to walk and exercise. And so I was bleeding really heavy. It was coming more frequently. I was anemic all the time. I was having iron infusions. No one really suggested, oh, maybe this is perimenopause, is why you're bleeding so heavy, your progesterone's low. So I went through that kind of thing and finally ended up having something called an ablation, which is a surgery to stop the
Right.
bleeding. And I chose that because I didn't know there were any other options. So I know a lot more now. I did have a lot of anxiety and a lot of anxiety in the middle of the night. I'd be up for 2 to 5 hours. So anxiety, insomnia. I had many, many, many bladder infections. So ended up taking a lot of antibiotics. And I would say I had like not vaginal infections, and I don't even think all of what I had were actual bladder infections, but they were a sensation like I was having a vaginal infection or bladder infection. And really what it was low estrogen, and I had no idea. But I went for years like that, absolutely miserable. And that was just the beginning. I've had plenty of other symptoms since then, but that was how it started for me. And I had no idea what was happening.
Wow. Okay. So, at what age then did that start, Marybeth?
Let's see, I would say at about age 45. Right around
Okay.
there. I'm not quite sure when
Yeah.
the
So
heavy
mid.
bleeding, like when that started changing, but I know that by 45 it was pretty significant.
Yeah. So how has that changed then? Your symptoms
My symptoms?
over time.
Well, over time, I mean, I've also had, hot flashes, depression, like body pain, a list of many more things. But how it's changed is through informing myself what the options are. I had been to many, many, many doctors and spent tens of thousands of dollars and never got help. No one mentioned menopause. I do have a doctor now that is very wise and helping me a lot. I do take bioidentical hormones. I make sure an intermittent fast. I do the appropriate exercise for how I'm feeling. I do follow a primal diet, a little bit similar to paleo, but I pay attention to my body and what it needs. I get a lot more sleep than I used to. Um, I try to limit my stress. I know that at this time in my life, I can't handle the amount of stress I handled before because I really stressed my adrenals and ended up with adrenal fatigue, which also makes menopause symptoms worse. And it created a thyroid condition for me, hypothyroid and Hashimoto's. All of those things, they're so
Right.
interconnected. It's like until perimenopause and menopause, you can get away with so much more. And then for me, it was finally like, nope, my body was done. And it was like, sorry, no more stress, no more, it's just like I came to a point where I had no choice, is how it felt. There was
Hmm.
no like sneaking around my health issues by that time. So, yeah.
Yeah. My goodness. So it all kind of came to a head all at once then.
Hmm.
All these conditions kind of surfaced, right?
Yes. And well, the perimenopause things that I mentioned at the beginning started with that, but then it escalated right from including those to, vaginal dryness, loss of sex drive, difficulty with orgasm, hot flashes. My hair was really dry and brittle. I had a lot of joint pain. I couldn't get in and out of the car very well. And I thought, and I'm a former athlete, like even in my 40s. I have another company that is paleo. So I was always really into health and I could not figure out what was going on. So, I feel like I've almost had every symptom possible.
Right, I see. So, with obviously going through such a tough time with your menopause, were there any particular challenges that you faced that they were quite significant?
Well, I think one of the biggest ones is trying to find help, honestly. We're not educated about menopause the way we were, about puberty, even if our puberty education was lacking, right? We still had something. And there's available
Yes,
education about pregnancy and birth. Um, but I never, my mom never talked to me about menopause. Now, she didn't have significant issues. So I'm sure that's one reason why, but none of the women who are a little bit ahead of me in years ever mentioned it. And now my experiences from all my research, all the women I work with, everything is women have been suffering forever. And it's
yes,
basically just been, well, that's how menopause is. And what I feel like is we've normalized it, not just in menopause, but I'll say this about menopause. We've normalized the suffering of women in our society, and for sure during menopause,
yeah.
as if there's no answers, as if there's no help. And that's not true. There's a lot of help if you can find the help either yourself or through a doctor or a health coach or someone. There is a lot you can do to then live a great second half
Hmm.
of your life. I mean, it's kind of depressing to think about, finally having your kids out of the house or close or whatever, and then feeling like you can't really function very well in your life. Anyway.
Yeah. No, I completely understand that. Yeah. You know, as women we're living longer as well, so to suffer, it's a long, really long term suffering if you're going to sit and suffer through it and not
Yeah.
get the help that you need.
Hmm. And I really would call it
Then,
suffering. I do
so
know. Hmm.
yeah,
Go ahead.
sorry, no, no, finish, please.
Oh, I mean, I remember there being, years in my life during this journey where I thought, if this is the way the rest of my life is going to be, I don't like I don't think this is worth it. Like, this is not, I wouldn't say I was suicidal, but I would say I thought, the next 40 years are going to be terrible. I'm not going to have any joy. I'm not going to want to do anything because I definitely didn't want to socialize very much, or, it just felt like there was no hope. And I think that a lot of women feel like there's no hope. And that's really, really sad, you know?
It is absolutely, totally agree with you. So I know you said that you've obviously had seeked quite a lot of medical advice from different practitioners. So talk to me a little bit more about that journey and the outcome of it.
So I live in Washington State, near Seattle. I live on a little island called Woodby Island, and I did a lot of searching for a doctor in my area because Seattle is a big city and a lot of alternative medicine. And I really couldn't find, that was mostly online. I really couldn't find anyone that stood out as who I should get help from. And I didn't know it was menopause at the time. So I was, looking for alternative practitioners. And I ended up, because there's a few people I follow online, I ended up going to a doctor. I flew to Tennessee, I flew to California, and nobody said anything about menopause. They tested me for all kinds of things. They said, your work looks great. Another one of my symptoms was weight gain. And I literally, I'm not kidding, to where I felt like, and it's not far off from this, that I gained 25 pounds overnight. And that was not
Wow.
normal for me. I'd always been, since, like, really paying attention to my diet, um, lean,
Mm.
healthy, exercise, ate very well. And all of a sudden, I could not quit gaining weight. So that was another symptom that I forgot to mention, which is what happens with many women.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I went to these doctors. They tested me and they're like, I don't know why you're gaining weight. I don't know why you're so anxious. I don't know why you're, all these things. You look good on the blood work. And
Yeah.
there were a few things they had me address, but nothing that made a significant difference. And they also never mentioned adrenal fatigue or thyroid issues. So,
Right.
and I spent a lot of money. And I also went to a couple doctors in Seattle. Um, and after that, I had been researching this whole time myself, and I've always done a lot of health research. It's just something I've always done, listen to podcasts. So I started finding a lot of my own
Yeah.
answers. And when I was going to doctors, I found myself educating them and asking for certain tests and saying, what about this? And a lot of the doctors aren't
Mm-hmm.
very comfortable with that. And, unless they're willing to kind of re educate themselves and, up their education on menopause, it's not something that's taught when they're in school. It's a very, very small amount. So you have to be actually interested in it and wanting to help the women coming to you, I think, and keeping up on the new science and education and what's available. So I was asking for things that they weren't comfortable testing me for or treating me for. And so I kind of wove my own way with supplements, some different things, and worked on my intermittent fasting. I rested more, my exercise. I really tried to be, a little more honed in on my diet for nutrition. And then I did end up finding
Yeah.
a doctor in California who's now in Tennessee. And he has really helped me educate myself even more. Also helped me learn how to be an advocate for myself, because he's really, really interested in, helping women speak up for themselves. And so I've gotten a lot
Oh,
of education
excellent.
from
Hmm.
him. Yeah, I've gotten a lot of education from him that's added on to what I already had. And he was also the first person to diagnose me with Lyme disease and Epstein-Barr. So I had a lot of stuff going on. I don't know that everybody
Yeah.
quite has this many things happening, but I've been working on things for years. I think with menopause, because hormones are always shifting a little bit, you're going to have to be
Yeah.
willing to shift yourself as you go. It's not a one and done, but I can say that, for instance, prior to taking bioidentical estrogen, I could hardly go on walks. I could hardly get in and out of the car. And estrogen helps with a lot of things. But within 3 days of
Mm-hmm.
taking estrogen, pain in my body was gone. Like, that's how fast something, if you find something, it can help you. So that's where I wish we
Yeah.
as women had more education. And unfortunately, one of the biggest things when I talk to people is we have to learn how to advocate for ourselves and not let people say there's nothing, you know, that can be done, because there
That
is,
they,
and you have to insist on it, unfortunately. Yeah.
yeah. So your bioidentical estrogen then, is that topical? Is that a cream or a gel? Or...
Yeah,
Yeah,
so I use a topical lotion, which is called Biest. It's a bioidentical hormone. I also use a topical progesterone and a topical testosterone. And I take a capsule at night of progesterone as well. And, all of those, treat different things. And I know in different countries you can get different things over the counter or not. You can get
sure.
progesterone and estrogen cream here over the counter, but you cannot get testosterone over the counter, which is, another area of our society where we've got this misogyny in medicine. And, you know, people think that testosterone isn't important to women, but it is. It's really important. So, anyway, that has to
So
come through a
important.
compounding pharmacy in the States.
Mhm. Yeah, we have the similar problem in the UK. Testosterone is not isn't normally considered as part of a hormone replacement therapy preparation. Doctors will immediately look at your estrogen and your progesterone, but not
Hmm.
automatically your testosterone.
Right.
It is really just sex related. Like loss of libido, and even then, I think you would have to have had played quite a case even for that even to be a consideration. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, testosterone
Yeah,
really helps a long way.
yeah. With muscle mass as well, which is really important as we age with our bone health. I mean, there's so many things, so many reasons why it's important. So, anyway, we have to keep on working on that too.
100%, yes. So, I take it things are a little bit more stable for you now, then, Mary Beth. Now that you know your sort of HRT is in place, and like you said,
Mhm.
you've already, um, you know, controlled your diet and your exercising, and everything just seems ticking along for you just now, right?
Yeah, and I've tried to up my protein, make protein a priority, which is really important once you get in menopause. So I've worked on that. I've
Mhm.
focused more on cruciferous vegetables because it helps balance your estrogen. So the cabbage, the broccoli, um, what else? Cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, all of those are really helpful in balancing estrogen. So I try to make some of
Mhm.
those a priority, which is different than I used to do. I mean, I think I just ate whatever vegetable was available. You know what I mean? I didn't focus on anything really. Um, and I used to, when I first started gaining weight, I tried exercising harder. I would eat less. I would fast harder. And what I didn't know at that time is I already had really stressed adrenals and it made them even worse.
Yeah.
So I had a major crash, which added to the normal menopause symptoms and my thyroid. And it's taken me about 5 years to get through the healing of my adrenals. And so I highly
Mm.
recommend women look at their stress levels before and make changes before you get to that stage because it's one of the most difficult things to heal if you get really far down the line. And, I think we're all overstressed anyway. But, I still deal with having no hot flashes and then having them come on and having to adjust my lotions, different things
Mhm.
like that where things will ebb and flow. And then I just need to look at what I'm doing again, either my diet, my exercise, my fasting, whatever is if it's supplements or a prescription or something like that. So it's just
Yeah.
little tweaks here and there, but it's still in process, and I don't know if it ever is going to be not in process. I'm unsure about that now.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Only time will tell, isn't it? I think it's one of those
Yeah,
things.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. So, whilst you were going through all of this, then, Mary Beth, how did it affect the menopause affect your personal relationships?
Well, I think pretty significantly. So, about 6 years ago, I got remarried. And so, when this first started, I was single and had met my now to be husband. Um, And I was dealing with a lot of anxiety. I was dealing with that heavy bleeding that's a little uncomfortable when you're first meeting someone and dating. Like, I've got these things happening that feel a little embarrassing, right? I hadn't heard anybody talk about them. And
Mhm.
like these I remember having these what felt like, I'm not even sure they were actually bladder infections, all of them anymore, but felt like bladder infections with a lot of pain. And I kind of felt embarrassed, and I didn't tell him about all of them because it just feels awkward. And again, I didn't hear
Course.
anybody
Yeah.
else talking about it. So I thought, what's wrong with me? Like, something's wrong with me. And I don't know how to fix it. So I guess I'm just going to do this thing over here by myself. And then I would say after that, when that became not so uncomfortable after some time, I had definitely years of depression, which is not
Right.
fun for your spouse or anybody that's living with you to deal with. Um, Definitely, and I don't think this is uncommon. I mean, it kind of actually, there were parts of COVID where I was like, great, I don't have to say no to anybody asking me to do things because I don't want to do anything. Like, I became very
Yeah.
antisocial, and I don't think that was very
Mhm.
fun for him at all. He would like to socialize more or wanted to socialize more. And I just wasn't up for it. I was so down that I just couldn't imagine going anywhere and like having a conversation. Um, and he's been great support. And still,
Mhm.
it's not easy. And I'm at a pretty good
No.
place right now, but it went for years though. So he's had to kind of chug along with me. And luckily, he was interested in learning and supporting me however he could. But not everybody has that support. So I hope more women get that support through whatever means they need to get it, because I don't know what I would have done without him, at least as a support system.
Yeah. And I think that, yeah, that point is it's so, so important that, if you can't lean on your partner, that you've got somebody to lean on, whether that's a family member that you talk to regularly, or a friend, a
Hmm.
close friend, but someone that you can confide in, and um, really just someone to be that ear for you.
Yeah. The other thing I'd say too, because this happens to women frequently in menopause, is they go in with anxiety and depression. And because you only have a 15-minute appointment, your doctor gives you birth control pills or an antidepressant. Um, and really, what's going on is your progesterone's low and is causing you anxiety, or your estrogen's low and causing you depression, all that kind of thing. Whereas if you could treat your hormones first, you wouldn't have
Hmm.
to look at those medications. Now, there certainly are people who absolutely also need those medications. So I'm not lessening that at all. But if you're someone who hits menopause and has never really had depression and anxiety, and now you have it badly, I'd say
Yeah.
really, really look at your hormones before letting a doctor give you the pill or an antidepressant, because my experience is the antidepressant works for a very small amount of time. And then the symptoms come back because you've never dealt with what is really going on.
Hmm. And I think for a lot of women, even the antidepressants, they don't have any effect because it's not the root cause of what's going on. Like you're saying, it's hormonal. Yeah.
Hmm.
So
Yep.
it's just their
Yep.
symptoms because they're not treating the source.
Right. Right. Well, and that's something we do in our society a lot, is just treat the symptoms.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's modern day medicine though, isn't it? It's not prevention. It's trying to treat the problem once it's a little bit too late.
Right. Right.
So going through obviously such a tough journey and learning on the way, is there anything that you think that you wish you had known before entering the menopause?
Well, I'd
All of it.
say Oh, yeah, I was gonna say anything and everything. I just wish I knew potentially what might happen so I could have recognized it. Um, I wish I knew for instance, what sex hormones are, which is your progesterone, your
Mm.
estrogen, your testosterone, and to pay attention to what's going on with those. I wish I would have known something about my thyroid. I really wish
Yeah,
I would have known that I could get in such trouble with my adrenals that at some point in your life, you cannot push that any further. Like you can run on adrenaline and stress for a certain amount of time, but at some point, your body's going to give up. And I really
yeah,
wish I would have known that. I just wish I would have educated myself and also learned how to be an advocate for myself because I went to doctors for several years before I was willing to say, no, something's wrong. I'm not leaving till I get the test I need. And I don't care what those labs say that you're looking at. I am unwell and
yeah,
I need some help. No. And it's unfortunate, but if you're in that situation, you have to do that and or just keep searching for someone who can help you and who is interested in listening because there's a lot of doctors that just want to look at the labs and not your symptoms and then just tell you you're okay when you're clearly not okay.
yeah, absolutely. Was there anything else, Mary Beth, that you'd like to share about your menopausal experience with listeners today?
Well, I think basically everything we've kind of talked about just start educating yourself if you're in it or if you haven't hit it yet. So you know how to recognize some of the symptoms. You might also start talking to people, finding someone who's had good success with a doctor or a health
Yeah,
coach, or, and even build a community, start talking to your women friends about it so you can support each other, start talking to your partners, whatever you need to do to either be prepared or to start getting the help and support you need would be my advice in that way, separate from trying to eat healthy, you know, getting some exercise, doing all those things we kind of know we're supposed to do and getting enough sleep. Um, I think
hmm,
one of the main things is the education and the advocating for yourself.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. Even even just tracking your menstrual cycle is so important and can you know really show a lot about what's going on with your hormones. I think so. Yeah, there's definitely a
Yep.
lot that women can be doing now.
Yep.
Yeah, excellent. So I think that brings us to the end of our conversation then, Mary Beth. Thank you so much for joining us today in the studio and sharing your experience with us all. Um, I will speak to you soon, no doubt.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you for tuning in to Menopause Unplugged. I hope you found the conversation to be informative, enlightening, and empowering. Remember, menopause is a natural part of a woman's life journey, but it doesn't have to be a lonely one. Whether you're experiencing perimenopause or menopause, my menopause coaching program can provide reassurance and guidance. Please do reach out to me through my contact details on the show description. And until next time, take care.